Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I'm honored to have Taylor Cavanaugh with me. Taylor is a former Navy SEAL and a French Foreign Legionnaire. And a couple of things I'm really excited to talk about in his story today is one, how we can kind of master and start dialing into controlling ourselves, but two, self-discipline and how that can get us to where we want to go. So Taylor, thanks so much for being on today, my man.
Bill, I appreciate the invite. It's cool to be here, and thank you everybody for listening in.
You bet. So rewinding the clock to about a 7-year-old you, one day you and your dad are kind of outside and you see some glowing lights and you're curious as to what the heck those could be. So talk a little bit about just exposure to the military and maybe getting some of those seeds planted early.
Growing up, I grew up on a Marine base. So I was very young though, right? But the military wasn't pushed on me. My dad was in six and out, not a military guy.
Yeah.
You know? But for whatever reason, I had an interest in it. And at 7 years old, I'm standing on this hill. We're in San Diego at the time. He was out of the military. And I see glow lights floating in San Diego Bay, kind of near Coronado Bridge and that whole thing. If people are familiar with the area.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what is that? And he said, those are Navy SEALs training in the Bay. I was like, what? That's a thing. What is the deal? Who are Navy SEALs? Then that seed got planted in my heart.
Yeah.
And that's a very familiar story with a lot of special operators. If you talk to Green Berets or SEALs, you ask them when that seed got planted, and it's very often around 7. You'll find, for whatever reason, 7 years old, but young, and it just stuck. And so from that point, it was Blockbuster at the time, right?
Yeah.
VHS tapes, that whole scene. And I was going in and renting Men with Green Faces and trying to get all information I could. And it was really, really calling to me. The jungle. Like, I was really fascinated with the Vietnam War. And it was fascinating the man who was doing it. That was the interesting part. I didn't have a romantic idea of war, mind you. Even from a very young age. I didn't fantasize about being Rambo, even though Rambo is a great movie.
Right.
But that wasn't I was serious about it from a really young age. And that's where that started, Phil.
Now, as you're growing up, our friends and who we start spending time with are very impactful on decisions that we make. And so you mentioned, hey, in high school, maybe didn't make my wisest life choices. Maybe, made a few decisions that could lead me down different paths. So talk a little bit about, your circle and who you start spending time with and how those people can impact your future decisions.
I'm going to spin that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't who I was hanging out with. I was the bad group. I wasn't around bad. I hear that all the time. I was the bad one. I sought it out. I wasn't around it and it came to me. Yeah. I sought it out actively. And sure, when you do that, you're going to be around different types of characters. But I was always pushing the fold. Always pushing the fold. And where we grew up, it was just what you did.
Yeah.
We were at a very young age. We were down in Mexico partying, shooting steroids, getting tattoos, talking 15 years old, right? Young. And that was normal. It wasn't that weird. And so I didn't stand out that much, but I definitely wasn't trying to get away from it. Right? But it didn't start that way. Coming into freshman and sophomore year, I was the straight A student. I always got good grades, but I was at home. But I also just didn't have a car, didn't have access. Yeah. And then once I had the freedom and more of the access, then I started branching out. It was more interesting than staying home and doing homework.
Yeah, that absolutely. Now, I think within that, and I know you said, hey, I was kind of seeking it out. I think oftentimes you can notice leadership qualities in people early on, but how they choose to lead people can be the differentiator, right?
Well
I
said.
could, if I'm a good leader, I can lead you to make decisions that maybe aren't the wisest for you, or I can, lead you to make wise choices. So talk a little bit about, those early stages and maybe starting to notice some leadership qualities in yourself, or aspects of you that were allowing you to influence others.
I always had a lot of charisma.
Hmm.
I've always been able to speak and be interesting and be engaging.
Yeah.
I I'd like to think my emotional intelligence is high. I
Yeah.
can read people. I know what they need, what they don't need emotionally.
Hmm.
I also understand the importance of asking questions. I also understand the importance of being quiet. I understood those things very early on. So that's very good for making friends. And also I was a really good athlete. I'm okay looking. I'm not a GQ model, but it helps. And all those things kind of allowed me to be in a solid group with the athletes, the girls, the pretty girlfriend, and all of that added up to being able to be somewhat influential
Yeah.
on people around me. And like you said, you know, a fish stinks from the head. So if the leader in a group is not aimed correctly, you're taking everybody with you in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So, but that's also just what everybody was doing. So
Yep.
it didn't really seem bad at the time, until bad things started happening. And that's when it was all fun and games until it wasn't. I mean, we started having a lot of people die at my high school. We start like not a small amount. I'm talking 15, 20 people
Wow.
from different things and big accidents, big, huge car accidents. I got in multiple and losing scholarships, losing high school, got kicked out. And that was just stacking up and stacking up. And those are the signs. Those are the signs that the universe sends you. And I just wasn't paying attention.
Yeah. So with that, once again, as a young boy, you have this goal and dream. All right, I want to go, military, Navy SEALs, that'd be great. You go through this patch of, we'll just say decisions that maybe in hindsight you'd say, all right, that probably wasn't the thing helping me get to this goal.
Yeah.
So how do we transcend and adjust into getting to going into the military?
Well, I was at a high school where you just went to college.
Mm.
My grandfather was a captain in the Navy, Naval Academy graduate. My mother went to college. It was 99.9. We were in a decently affluent area.
Yeah.
And so you went to college. It was like an extension of high school.
Yep.
So military wasn't even on my radar
Mm.
yet. So it wasn't even an option to not go to college. That's
Yeah.
kind of how it was just mandatory. So it got shelved. So that was also a little bit of what was happening is I knew it was far away.
Mm.
Military's not even close. I got what, half decade more? That's a third of my life at the time almost.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even relevant. I was gonna do it, but later. And so that went into college, and then a whole slew of things happened during that time, and it was still shelved and still shelved. Arrested many times,
Mm.
drug problems, dealing drugs, doing drugs, moving all over the country, kicked out of schools, went to 5 colleges,
No.
finally graduated from University of California, Santa Cruz, banana slugs, and then that later was now. And
Yeah.
I had to clean up a lot of problems, and I had to go to jail and clean up my probationary sentence,
Mhm.
to commute my probation, rather, to even have the option of pretty much walking in any recruiting door
Yeah.
and have them be able to speak with me. So that's where we're at this point.
So I want to highlight something you said there, and we're talking about in the scope of your life and joining the military, but someone listening just heard that exact same thing and said, man, I've had a goal, but my goal isn't for 10 years down the road. And so some of the decisions I've been making haven't necessarily aligned with getting me to that goal because it's just so far away. So what would be, words of encouragement, words of advice that you'd give someone, hey, even if the goal isn't here today, the decisions we're making today are going to either help us get there quicker or they may be deviating us from the ultimate goal.
Now matters.
Mm.
It's not only matters, it's the most important thing right now. You're present. If you're not actively using your present for the direction you're going, you're doing yourself detriment. You're not, if it's not helping you, it's hurting you.
Yeah.
It's very hard to encapsulate this idea when you're young.
Yeah.
Because everything's ambiguous. So you're not focused. Some were more focused than I was. 100%.
Yeah.
Some are old souls. I'm a very young soul. I think this was my lifetime where I had a lot of leveling up and learning to do.
Yeah.
Because I was oblivious. Looking back, I was truly oblivious to anything. I was so clueless and lacked self-awareness that I wasn't even thinking of career. I was very much in the here and now in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Right? In the immediate gratification way and not the purpose driven way. And I wasn't choosing purpose over pleasure. I was picking pleasure every time. And that is really the two decisions you have to make, I would say, to anybody young who's listening to this. Is the decision you're making purpose driven or is it pleasure driven? And I promise you, if you choose the purpose driven path, more often than not, you're going to have a very beautiful life and a much cleaner, better life. Always. Because you're going to eradicate problems. And you're going to eradicate and eliminate friction points and obstacles that you're going to fabricate in your way when you're trying to go in direction. You're going to make it much, much easier on yourself if you just institute a little bit of discipline.
I love that. Now, talking about discipline, you just mentioned earlier, hey, once I got the freedom of having like a vehicle and being able to go places, I did more things. And now we're going to head into the military, which is probably almost feels like some form of a jail, right? Because you're losing a lot of your autonomy. There's going to be a lot more structure in place than when you're on your own. So was that transition into military a tough transition for you? Just, having a little bit less freedom and more kind of structured lifestyle there?
It was so smooth for me. It was so smooth that I fit into the military like one of them round pegs, as far as Gump would say.
Yeah.
I was so happy to be there because it had taken me so long to get there, to get my SEAL contract.
Yeah.
I had to go to jail. I had to turn down by multiple branches. The Marines turned me down. The Army turned me down. Everybody's turned me down. I got a chance. It took me 9 months. I got all these letters of recommendation, tattoo waivers, conduct waivers, all these things. The stars aligned. I get a SEAL. By the time I was in boot camp, I'll fold underwear all day long. I didn't care because I knew where I was going.
Yeah.
And I was in a special warfare boot camp unit, which was just all SEAL candidates at the time. It was 100 SEAL candidates. Only 9 ended up making it from that group, but it was exactly where I was supposed to be. And I think for anybody listening, you'll know where you're supposed to be because it will feel correct. It might be difficult. Sure, it was hard, very hard, but I knew it was right. Trust your gut. So it was very smooth for me. I had no problems with the regimentation.
Now, you just, mentioned something that I think people hear frequently, and that is very few people actually make, that ranking, right? I mean, 100 were in your class, 9 of you passed. That means once again, 9%, 9% passed, 91 others were out. So from whether it's a mentality standpoint or whatever it is, what do you think is the separation factor for, those 9 that are able to succeed throughout all the grueling tasks that are given versus the majority, the 91, that, hey, this isn't for me, or just can't quite cut it.
Well, there's two groups. There's the can't quite cut it. That sucks for those guys. They just aren't fast enough, or they get an injury and something happens. But most are attrition from quitting. And what separates those guys from guys who don't is the guy who makes a decision to stay there and the guy who makes the decision to quit, both just made a decision. That's it.
Yeah.
And the guys who make it, the story they told themselves getting there was they had no plan B. They burned the boats. The boats were burned.
Yeah.
If you burn the boats, you don't have a choice. You're going to make it happen. And that was, in my case, absolutely true. I truly, truly felt like I had no other options. I couldn't have even stayed in the military and afforded my student loans. It wouldn't have even worked. Like, I had to make it to not be destitute. And because my mother had co-signed on college loans, I couldn't just leave her hanging. It would have been my whole paycheck every month for the rest of my whole military career. So I knew I'd make more money in SEALs. Also, Hayes Gray and underway wasn't an option for me. I was not doing that. I wanted a gun. I wanted to deploy. I wanted to be a special operator. I was not trying to be in the regular military at all. Take that how you want it.
Yeah.
So that's why I had looked into French Foreign Legion, and I had been aware of French Foreign Legion before. That's where that whole time came on my radar, when I wasn't sure if I could get into the United States military. And I was always leaving that on the table as a look red, grab red if I, didn't make SEALs. So no plan B. You're there.
Yeah.
You're there to make it happen. And that's just how it's going down.
I love that. Now, for you going through the training, is there specific moments that stand out to you as either moments of validation of like, all right, I really can do this, or moments where you were like, I'm so thankful that even though I was at the brink of, man, is this the right thing? Or can I go another day? Can I go another hour? But I, forged through, and then, I was able to get through that.
There's many, many very challenging. We'll talk buds here specifically.
Yeah.
Talk the SEAL selection. Out of body experience hard. It's you can't really describe it to somebody who hasn't done it. It's so hard that you really don't know you can be in that much pain running on a boat on your head and things like that. But I had an interesting thing happen with my feet. When I got to buds, I had a pair of boots that were like a half size too small. And I wasn't wearing sock liners, and I got some sand and chafe in there, and I got MRSA on my feet. And they swelled up after this was the first, like within the first week of first phase. And they swelled up, and I had sand, and I couldn't even get my boots on. They were so swollen. And I remember running, and I was not quitting. And I'm running to breakfast one morning or something, and I can't even get my boots on. They're completely unlaced. And I had a buddy he's still operating at the tip of the spear now. You know what I'm saying? And he said, stop, man. We lived together at the time. He said, stop, go to medical. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to medical. Well, that's where all the quitters go when they just want to say they're hurt. I said, I can't go there. He's like, you have got to go. And I said, okay. And I went, and the medical staff looked, and he went. The SEAL goes, whoa. And he was like, that's serious. And when he said that, I knew it was serious. They sent me to the doctor, and this doctor looked at my feet. He said, you're done. There's no way you're going to be able to finish this class for sure. I said, well, just give me the weekend. It was a Friday. I said, give me the weekend and give me something. He said, okay. And he gave me some magic potion, antibiotic or something. He said, soak your feet in this. This guy was a godsend. He said, soak your feet in this, come back on Monday. I soaked my feet in this thing all weekend, and I never went back to the medical. Right? They weren't perfect, but they were much better. And just that one decision, if I had pushed past that day, I probably wouldn't be sitting here with you talking
Yeah.
about how I was a SEAL. Seriously. So that one little piece of decision of listening to somebody for once, really being who was a tough kid and who would never have said that if it wasn't pushing it. Sometimes you have to swallow your pride to do something correct. You can't always be tough. Sometimes you have to be smart.
Yeah. That's really good. I love that. Now, when you're in there, so I had a gentleman named Rich Davini on the show, and Rich was a former Navy SEAL, and then post, being active duty, part of his job was to help create the best groups of SEALs once they pass, right? Kind of taking the attributes of each of them and putting it together. And one of the things that he said that was very interesting to me, and it lines up with what you've been saying, is the people that pass through weren't always the Division I athlete. Very rarely were they that person. They weren't the person that had maybe had the most success in life. Oftentimes they were people that had come from tough backgrounds or maybe blue collar type lifestyles, because they understood tough times come, but they don't last, right? They had they had faced adversity, they had overcome adversity. So thinking about that for you, you say, gosh, I went to jail, man. Like I had some, crap that I had to deal with. I had tough family background. I had grown up in a tough, part of California. But all of those things helped build a resilience factor, right? They help build hey, even when crappy things happen, I can still overcome them. So talk about that piece for you, and just, maybe some of those earlier life experiences that you would never wish for somebody to have to deal with, but because you had those impact your life, you were able to have resilience when you got into more difficult things.
My parents had a tumultuous relationship. That reality I saw. Now, mind you, people have had way worse. It wasn't, I had a lot of love and support in my family. It wasn't like that, but I saw some explosiveness, some things, dad in and out, but always around, never just gone, not like that. But being raised by a single mother through a large portion of my life, that I believed helped, because my mom worked all the time, and she was busy. So you had to work.
Yeah.
Like after sports was over, I got a job. It wasn't even asked of me. I knew, because my mom wasn't giving me any money.
Right.
She wasn't going to give me money. So how are you going to drive your truck? You need gas. I just knew right when football was over. The next day, I was at the mall getting a job at the clothing, whatever, the surf,
Yeah.
right, work, San Diego, and selling snowboards and surfboards. That's just what you did.
Yeah.
So I think self-reliance for sure, doing your own laundry at a very young age, you're just able to do things and figure stuff out.
Yeah.
The poor decisions I made too later on, I had some tough moments where I had to get real with myself, honest with myself about being a loser and having to change things and lose everything, at 19, and go move in the basement of my aunt and uncle's house, being, big man on campus, I thought, and now I'm living in the basement and no one's around, and and I'm working landscaping. Right?
Yeah.
I had all these ups and downs that were totally self-induced, but as you stated very well, they taught me to rally. They taught me that, you said it perfectly. Tough people last, but tough times don't.
Yeah.
It taught me that they're just push a little further and there'll be a little light. Just a little bit further and there'll be a little light. Not forever, even though it feels like it might be.
Yeah.
That was important.
Yeah.
For sure. And it translated perfectly in buds, because literally in the middle of the night, you're like, the sun's never coming out, but it will.
Yeah.
It will. And it does. It always does. And it always did.
I love that. Now, something you just said there, I'd love to hear some insight on, and that was, I had to get real with myself, right? I think so many people either don't want to admit their shortcomings or the dumb choice, whatever it is, because it makes us feel like a loser, to use your word, right? Or we don't want to deal with it because it's easier to blame somebody else, right? It's easier to say, well, I wouldn't have done that had this person done this, or had I had this opportunity. But to be real with oneself is probably the most beneficial thing you could do, right? Taking, ownership of, hey, that's on me, right? Yeah, there's always other things that impacted how I've gotten here, but the sooner we can just own that was my choice, now I have to be the one to, make the most out of what comes next. Talk a little bit about that for yourself. And once again, at 19, that's hard. At 30, that's hard. At 50, it's hard. It's always hard to be just real with yourself and take the full, credibility for it, opposed to finding some other way around it, or to bury it, not deal with it, and, have it rear its head later.
Everything clears up and is more efficient if it's just always your fault.
Yeah.
Much more efficient. Somebody stole from you in your company, you hired them.
Yeah.
Right? Take us on a self-inventory. Write it down. Things get real when you put it in black and white and you can see it.
Yeah.
That's what I had to do a few times. A real honest inventory. Where are you at? What are you doing? How do you feel about it? Look at yourself in the mirror. Are you proud of that person? If the answer is no, you got to change something. And the only way to go somewhere, if you're lost, is to know where you're at. If you're lost in the woods, you will die in the woods if you don't know where you are, because you don't know where to go.
Yeah.
You can't take a bearing if you don't know where you're at. That's the most key part that I push on, like my program that I get guys on that are lost in the woods a little bit. Get honest. The first part of being honest is admitting you need help.
Yeah.
That's hard to do as a man. Reach out to another man and ask for help. Or if you're not willing to do that, start changing things. Start subtracting things more specifically.
Yeah.
Start subtracting what you're doing. Don't start adding stuff. Start subtracting stuff. Guaranteed that will be more efficient to where you're trying to go. I think that getting honest with yourself is scary, especially if you haven't been doing the right stuff for a while, because it might be some real backlog stuff. Is it your health? Is it the eating? Or if you're not in good shape, guess what? You have a problem.
Right.
If you're overweight, you have a problem. If you're drinking every day, you have a problem. Yeah. There's issues that if you just admit there's a problem, you can fix it. But the biggest lies that we tell are the ones we tell to ourselves. That saying goes, and those are the worst lies. You're lying to yourself. How ridiculous does that sound? It's ridiculous. What? You're in your own head lying to your own self. So the anxiety that causes from not making decisions, of not living in alignment with higher consciousness, not living in alignment is going to cause you problems, health problems, anxiety, mental issues, psychological issues, I should say. And people go wonder where's it coming from? And they're going to want to medicate. Well, it's because you're not living in alignment. It's simple.
Yeah.
And that's where that instituted discipline comes. If you get honest, you can start instituting discipline. If you don't, then you're not going to do anything about it.
I love it. Now, you just said, hey, reaching out to somebody. So one thing that I think about is growing relationships in buds, right? In SEAL training, and how hard that must be, knowing very few of these people are going to graduate, right? And I'm sure that can even make the process of passing harder, because it's like, if 2 or 3 of your, best friends or people that you've, attached to in training leave, I'm sure that allows doubt to start creeping into your mind, or it can, I should say. versus, hey, I want to latch on to, one or two strong people that seemingly think the way I do, and I feel like they've got a high probability of graduating with me or moving on with me. Talk a little bit about, cultivating those relationships, or what that looked like for you as you were going through the training process.
That might have been a problem for other people. I never had a friend quit.
Hmm.
Never. All the people that I synced up with from day one passed. And it wasn't have anything to do with me. Some of those guys helped me pass.
Yeah.
It was just like mine.
Hmm.
You recognize that warrior spirit.
Yeah.
I never had one friend quit. So I never dealt with that.
I love it. Is there anything that, as you look back on it, certain characteristics or qualities or like-mindedness that stuck out to you about those people early on?
I had the tiger.
Hmm.
You can see it in someone's face that
Yeah.
they're all business.
Yeah.
And they're not there to see if they want to be a SEAL. They want to be a warrior.
Yeah.
Different. It's a spirit that has been there since they were probably Vikings and knights, and now they're here. It's a different edge, it's a different energy, it's a more serious tone. I'm not saying it's stark, right? We
Yeah.
laugh and have a good time. And those relationships I made with those guys still have to this day. Very, very tight.
Yeah.
That you can't recreate in any other type of vacuum than that, other than shared extreme hardship. It's almost magical. It's so hard.
Yeah.
I've had memories of one of my best friends in Buds. We were doing what's called the boogeyman swim on the island, San Clemente, third phase. We're about to graduate Buds. We've been doing this for 10 months by this point. And they chum the water. It's like great white shark breeding ground. They chum the water and we go make a swim at night in the ocean. And there was so much kelp, so thick with kelp that we were crawling on it in the ocean. And tough guy, he was so frustrated. He's like, this is so frustrating. He's screaming at the top of his lungs out. We're out in the ocean. And I remember I started laughing. I said, he's like, I just can't do it, man. And I said, what are we going to do? Stay out here? And he started laughing because he realized we don't have a choice.
Yeah.
We have to go. Moments like that, you just can't recreate. And they're magical. We have some seriously cool stories from that you're only going to get through extreme shared hardship. And I'm grateful for them.
I love that. Now, I think, two things that you hear frequently that go along with, military, specifically Navy SEALs, is one, element of trust, right? And then two, just the sheer diligence and preparation that it takes to be successful as a unit. So, post, Buds, and getting into, different missions and jobs and things you did. Talk a little bit about, one, having to trust the person that you're with, right? Or the group of people that you're with. And then two, just the diligence and preparation that it takes before you're really, ready or able to embark on the mission at hand.
First of all, you have trust in the pipeline we all just went through.
Yeah.
There's that. Officers go through it. Everybody goes through it. So everybody there, at least you know one thing about him. He's tough. He's not going to quit.
Oh, yeah.
That checks a huge box.
Yeah.
Now competence is the next piece.
Hmm.
Some operators are more competent than others.
Yeah.
But everybody's competent somewhere. Some are more competent in lots of different areas. Some are more competent in more specific areas. Everybody gets placed in their level, their area of competence early on. What they gravitate to. The breachers go to the explosives. The snipers go to everybody's got their piece. So every team has its, the Avengers, right? You got the strong guy, you got the guy with the arrows, it's similar in that everybody has their angles, their strengths, and they're bringing it together for this one complete whole.
Mm-hmm.
That's stronger altogether. That's cool. So the trust piece is there from the shared hardship. And then you go through so much training together again and again and again. And it's for years. You're in the platoon with the core group for years. So the guys you come in with as new guys, you're all doing the struggle new guy learning stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And then you're the one platoon guys, and you're still the core group. New guys come in, and you're still the core group, and that goes on for multiple deployments a lot of times. So the cohesion and the trust, you're like family. You spend more time with those guys than anybody else in the world.
Yeah.
Way more time. Just in traveling as a SEAL, I would be gone, and this was not during deployments, 270 days a year. Minimum. Traveling in hotels, other bases, different training cells and different pipelines. It was substantial. It's your whole world. So they're not, people, guys aren't seeing their family. You're with those guys all the time, and you just get really tight knit. You know everybody's, you know what they look like walking on night vision from the back 50 meters away, just from their silhouette. Serious. You know the walk, you know everybody.
I love it. Now, you've mentioned, and people hearing this are probably picking up, but you say, I've kind of have one speed, and I would make almost every decision in my life with that one speed. Like if I'm doing something, I do it, right? There wasn't a half-assing anything that I've really done. So talk about the pros and the cons to having that on and off switch, right? Because once again, anything that's a strength of ours can have a backside weakness to us. It's
Always
just about
does.
being aware of it, right? And being able to control or prevent it from becoming too big of a weakness.
Always does. Everything has its inverse.
Yep.
So going full tilt, if it's not full tilt in something positive, there's going to be huge issues. Yeah. Which happened to me with partying. I would be out getting after it for days in a row, and that creates problems. You're putting yourself in compromising situations. You're chipping away at your self-worth. So there's that. Now let's shift it into something even positive, right? If you're going full tilt, a lot of times you don't see your own blind spots. Mm-hmm. And that happened to me in business. I had a failed business, and that was full tilt. And sometimes for me, full tilt comes with full trust. Mm. I just go and I assume everyone's good to go. Yeah. And that was a learning point for me, because things happen, right? And so that was a learning point for me, in that tactical pause is important. That tactical pause is important, and full tilt's not always good. I always err on the side of aggression. I think if you err on the side of aggression, you're going to make better decisions. At least you're going to make a decision now rather than some perfect plan next week. Yep. So I always err on the side of action over inaction, but you can take a pause, right, and try to make sure you have the whole scene. I would definitely say that that's something that I've had to learn with my full tilt switch, is make sure I have all the information. Yeah. And also it's okay. It doesn't need to be full pedal to the metal every time, every direction.
Yeah. So that leads me to think, and I know you said, hey, I had this business that didn't succeed like I thought it would. And one of the comments you made earlier was, in SEALs, there was that element of trust that you could have, because you knew everyone had at least succeeded at this same crappy thing you had to have success with. But when you get into everyday civilian life, you don't know that about somebody, right? You can learn about their story. You can hear some of the things they've been through, but you don't know that just off the bat that, hey, they've at least been through this crappy thing that I've been through, so I can inherently give them a certain level of trust. So how, as you transition into, everyday world where not everyone has gone through the same, rigor and, rigorous things that you had, do you, find that trust, and do you find ways to connect and get to the point of, can I trust them quickly?
Well, I started to shed that military identity. Even though I'm in the French Foreign Legion here, I started to realize that worth wasn't necessarily rooted in that world, my own worth.
Yeah.
Because I kept doing this self-sabotaging. And I'll bring it back to kind of answer this exactly. But I was doing this revolving self-sabotage, and it's because I didn't have that self-worth. So obviously those pipelines and stuff weren't what should be setting the tone of of who's worthy and who's not.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't even doing it for myself. So, and not every special operator is, you know, the best person to emulate also. And everybody in the community would admit that. There's people out who are civilians that never were special operators that are much better people to emulate their lifestyle. So that's kind of where I started to shift into the individual of, I had to do it in myself to where my identity wasn't who I was.
Yes.
Or I should say rather, my identity wasn't what I was doing.
Yep.
And that's where I had been. I've always been deliberate in my life. I've never by chance ended up somewhere. I was a SEAL, I'm a Legionnaire. I don't just happen into a job because my uncle, it's just not how I roll.
Yeah.
So I had to be deliberate about choosing not what I did, but who I was. Once I did that, everything cleared up. Because then I go, hey, I'm this guy and I'm this disciplined person. And so to answer your question, how do I get that trust? First of all, for me, I can't trust a person if they're not disciplined. And it's hard for me to respect people if they're not disciplined. If I can't get that discipline, and I don't mean you got to be like me and like doing Mike Tyson push-ups at 2 a.m, right? That's extreme, but I'm full tilt.
Yep.
But I'm saying if there's not some level of discipline, because how am I supposed to listen to this person if they don't even listen to themselves?
Right.
It's ridiculous. Yep. So it's really hard for me to get past that hump. That's why I work for myself, because I'm not going to have some fat boss telling me what to do when the guy can't even tell himself to not eat too many hamburgers.
Yeah.
It's absurd. So that's where I'm at with it. I see how people move. Then I'll give them respect.
Yeah.
But I don't just give it to them off the bat.
Yeah. I love it. That makes perfect sense. Now, to your point, and you just kind of mentioned it, so I want to tie it in. So we discharged from the Navy SEALs, and whenever we are transitioning, parts of our lives into the next phase, one of the things that's always interesting to me, especially when it's like a goal that you've had since you were 7, right? It is, well, what do I do next, right? I mean, you hear it with pro athletes all the time. They, their whole life has been dedicated to football, the basketball, the baseball, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden, that thing that they've gotten all of their notoriety for, the thing that people have respected them for, the thing that's created their wealth, is gone. And they're like, well, crap, what do I do now? Or what do I do to get my self-worth now? And you just were mentioning, having to have that moment with yourself. So talk a little bit about the transition for you in that.
And you're specifically speaking about from SEALs into civilian? Because I had 2 transitions.
Okay, well, go through both of them. That'd be awesome.
So transitioning from SEALs into civilian, I seamlessly moved into a pretty good position. I moved into a supervisor position for a very large private developer. Yeah. I had utilized some contacts, and so I was pretty much took a lateral step regarding pay, and respect was decent. So I had a great relationship. I was in love, so I was like distracted with that too. So, key word there, I was distracted.
Yeah.
I just moved right into that world, and at 1,000 miles an hour, I started taking Adderall every day, started drinking every day, started smoking weed every day, started taking Xanax every day, 7 days a week, pretty much the day I got out of the military.
Wow.
So I just was fine because I was numb. Yeah. I never even took 1 second to think about it too much. I was just like, well, let's keep going. And then I rolled into working for a venture capitalist, and we launched a cannabis company and all these different things. And I was still going a million miles an hour. Now I'm pitching decks. Now I'm raising millions of dollars. Now I'm doing this. Now I'm the CEO of this company. I'm big cheese. Look at me. I just got out of the SEAL teams and now I'm doing this in a high rise. So I was feeding my ego with with everything, substances, status. And then it all came crashing down. You can't bend reality for that long without something happening. And that did for me. I ended up homeless in my truck, suicidal, with nothing, no relationship, and now I had to take that honest self-inventory.
Yeah.
Because I had nothing else to distract me from it.
Mm.
It was reality, hardcore. I don't wish that moment on my worst enemy because it was filled with shame and regret.
Mm.
It was filled with uncertainty. It was filled with dangerous thoughts. It was filled with pity party. It was all the bad, negative, terrible, low-level emotions and frequencies I was operating at. And that's where, so that transition was that part was okay. And then obviously it was very difficult because I still hadn't decided who I was. Definitely, I would say if somebody's transitioning out, decide who you are and start instituting that disciplines because your self-worth is only going to come from discipline.
Yes.
It has got to. And I don't mean a little discipline. I mean a lot of discipline.
Yeah.
Not like sometimes getting up early. I'm talking for guys like me and definitely guys who are in that world, we need it. And I'll also say what I've learned now, and that was my first phase, and then going in through French Foreign Legion and getting out now, do the second, this has been way more successful because I had that experience. And also, now I knew who I was. Now I was back to deciding what I wanted to do with me having figured out who I was already and being able to pick it in a purpose-driven way.
Yeah.
I can make my money with my purpose.
Yes.
That being able to pair that to and have the freedom to maneuver is if you're transitioning out, pick a purpose. Because guys who are special operators or military, anything, very purpose-driven.
Yeah.
Pick a purpose, not a job.
Yeah.
Right? They say, and I didn't say passion. People say, oh, find your passion, right? Well, I'm passionate about chess, but I'm not going to be a grand chess master. I'm going to make my money off that. But you can incorporate it in your lifestyle, something that's purpose-driven, and it has to be outside of yourself. It has to be helping somebody in some way to add value to other people's lives for it to be truly something that you can step outside yourself for a moment and feel fulfilled.
So to talk about you said, hey, the low moment is a moment that I wouldn't wish upon anybody else. What are a couple tangible things you did to get through that moment? Because someone listening right now is like, Taylor, I can completely align with what you're saying. Like, I feel regretful or remorseful about these decisions that I made. I wish I wasn't in the spot that I'm in. But the reality is the choices have been made. And now you have one of two things you can do. One is you can confront it and go a different path, or two, you can soak in it and you'll probably stick right where you're at and you won't see the change in lifestyle. So talk about what are one or two tangible things for people that are walking through that season right now. Hey, what can they do to start the process of getting out?
Pick somebody you trust and reach out for help. First thing.
Yeah.
In whatever way that you need help, reach out for help. Isolation is very dangerous in these situations. Well, even though we want to isolate, because we don't want to deal with it. We don't want to hear somebody else's input. We're social animals. We need that. Reach to somebody, a family member, somebody. That's the first step. And then the second step, once you get that connection, you're going to start to feel better. Now, make a plan. Make a plan, pick a direction. Doesn't have to be the perfect direction. Pick a plan and start moving. Just start moving. The stagnation is going to kill you. The procrastination will kill, the stagnation will kill, maybe literally.
Yeah.
It's important. So start moving, reach out and start moving.
Now, if you're the person that gets reached out to, hey, the trusted friend, reaches out, they need some help, they want some support. What are a couple of the best things that I can do to support a person that's in that season of life?
I'll be right there.
Being there, show up.
Go up. That's right. Somebody's in that situation and you care about them, drop what you're doing and go. Because that might be that last call.
Yeah.
And you don't want to live with that if that's the last call. I promise you that. That's too important.
Well, and I think so many times people are in a position of influence within someone's life and they feel like, I don't know what I would say, or I don't know that I have the right words. Sometimes it's not anything, right? It's just the fact that you're there, right? Yeah, you'll show up, the human capital, right? I can be there. Hey, I'm there for you. I'll listen to you, whatever it is that you need.
90% of success, right?
That's right.
Show up, man. Show up. That's all. That's all. We just need that connection. The person just needs that connection more than anything else. Maybe they might need some logistical help.
Yep.
But you're there. You're talking through it. Now you're working a problem. You're solving a problem rather than just wallowing in a problem. It's two different things.
I love it.
And you're going to feel better too.
Yeah.
Helping people is massive, massive gain of energy and vibration, right? It's not to be done in selfish ways, but look, if you go help somebody, you're going to feel better.
No doubt.
Right? So it's a win-win.
That's right. If you're having a bad day, go do something good for someone else. And the day's not too bad anymore, right? Oh, I love it. So Taylor, what are we working on now? What's the next step for you, and in what direction are you heading currently?
Launch of the coaching business.
Yes.
So my whole angle is building the deliberate life. And we started from the basics. I get guys prior military, not LEO, firefighters. Guys who are a little bit lost in the sauce, lost their mojo. That's my perfect client because I know I've been there. And I built this a very clean, simple system, daily habits, proper supplementation, tracking of macros, proper training, all very simple to get started. That gets this movement going and gets that momentum kicked up, starts building that self-worth and those basic disciplines. Then we can get in the gym. Then we can get into stacking muscle. But first we got to burn some fat, clear the mind, gain that mental clarity, start getting in alignment because we go through all the daily habits, the goals, the habitual construction of the man they want to be. All these are done. So I started that coaching.
Yeah.
I got my book coming out. That'll be coming out sometime next summer. So that will be interesting. We'll have some other offshoot stuff, projects with that. And that's what's going on, man. And so we got a little bit of coaching going on, which I love. Get a lot of fulfillment from that. Seeing, guys go, I got a guy coming in from 400 pounds and in 3 weeks, now he's 360, right?
Wow.
So 3 weeks, drop 40 pounds, just changing some habits. Mm-hmm. I like seeing people's lives change because it's so simple to feel good. We complicate it. Yeah. It's so simple to feel good, but people just don't have the right information, right? Yeah. That's actually a lot of people. They just don't know how to eat correctly. They just don't know what they need to do. That's where I come in.
I love it. I love it. Well, Taylor, I want to say thanks so much for sharing your story, and I'm excited to continue to watch your journey. And we'll certainly have to do this again. We'll do one, when we release the book, and we can do a debrief and a download on the book, and encourage people to be able to get that and change their lives.
Oh, and if anybody wants to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me on Instagram at TCAVOfficial. You can check out my YouTube, TCAV TV. And all my my website's coming out on December 1st, TaylorCavanaugh.com.
I love it. Well, hey, I appreciate you, brother, and we'll look forward to following up soon.
Bill, appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for listening in.